Hello everybody. I am going to do a quick wrap up of what I did for O.W.L.s. I know it's only the middle of the month, but overachiever, I guess. If you're not familiar with O.W.L.s, I didn't do a TBR to explain all this stuff, but I can do a quick wrap up. I don't have the actual books on hand because I did it all audio, which is why I was able to finish so quickly. The O.W.L.s are part of the magical read-a-thon, which is hosted by G from Book Roast, and they're based on the ordinary wizarding levels from the Harry Potter series. They're tests that the students take in their 5th year. This year, this is the first time I've ever done it, and I'm glad I joined in this year. This year, there was a career guide that G put together, and it's really nice. Really, really nice. Hats off to all the work she put into it. She's mentioned that she's spent like a month solid working on it, and you can tell it's beautiful and very well done. But we had a choice. I think there was like 18 careers, something like that. There was a bunch of careers to choose from. And me, being insane and an overachiever, chose the hardest one, Alchemist. Now, to be an alchemist, you have to complete 12 owls. Each owl corresponds to a class that you would have taken at Hogwarts, and each of those classes has a reading prompt to go with it. Here's the list of prompts. Hopefully you can all read that. Looks pretty clear to my screen, but that doesn't mean you can see it. My computer does crazy things. Anyway, Alchemist has to do all of the owls. And then in August, when the newts happen, which are the nastily exhausting wizarding tests, I think I got that right, there's going to be 5 of them that you have to get an outstanding, which means you're going to have to read 3 books, and 1 that you have to get an exceeds expectations, which I believe is 2 books. So a total of 17 more books to be read in August. I don't think it's going to be a problem for me because I do audiobooks, and I've discovered a real love of graphic novels this month. Although I didn't use any for my reading list, I did actual audiobooks of novels and whatever. Anyway, what I read, here's my list of what I read. For Ancient Runes, a retelling, I read Pride by Evie the Boy. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I love Pride and Prejudice, and this is Pride and Prejudice set in modern day Brooklyn. Pretty interesting take on it. Arithmancy is the second one, and it's a work written by more than one author. So I read The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I had already read An Anonymous Girl because I had an ARC for it, and I read it right as it came out. And I really liked it, so I read The Wife Between Us, and it was pretty good. I had a few little issues with it, but overall I liked it quite a bit. The next one is Astronomy, and the prompt for that is Star in the title. And I read The Language of Stars, and it was very interesting. I had no idea what it was about going in. I just saw the word star and thought, yeah, it's something different than what everybody else is reading. I'm going to read it. And it turned out to be about a group of kids caught a poet's house on fire, and part of their punishment was that they had to take a class on that poet's writings, and it ended up being taught by the poet himself, and relations between the students and relations between the student and the teacher, and all these complications going on. One of the students became a really good poet, and there's a lot of poetry sprinkled throughout the book, which I enjoyed. And since April's Poetry Month, it worked. The next one is Care of Magical Creatures, and this is the first one I completed, actually. you're supposed to have a land animal on the cover. And I read Trouble at the Jam Fest, which I believe is the 4th book. It's either the 4th or the 5th book in the Food Lovers Mystery series. Food Lovers Village Mystery series. Anyway, it's a series of books that take place in a small town in Montana, I believe. And I had just gotten it downloaded and I thought, hey, it's got a cat on the cover. I'll read that. Cats are a land animal. So I went for that one. It's a pretty good series. If you like cozy mysteries, it's a good one. I like it quite a bit. The next one is Charms, and the charm is age line, and the prompt is to read an adult work. So I read Where the Crawdads Sing. Again, I went into it pretty much blind. All I knew is there was a mystery in there somewhere, and it turned out pretty interesting. A girl named Kaya, and I can remember her name because I watch a girl on YouTube whose name is Kaya. Spells it slightly different, but anyway. Basically is abandoned at age 7. Her mother left the family. Her brothers and sisters had already wandered off. It was just her and her dad, and he took off most of the time. He's rarely ever home. So she basically raised herself from age 7. And then something happens when she's a little older, and there's some legal stuff. Anyway, really well done. I really liked it. I think it's part of the Reese Witherspoon's reading club thing too. So if you're into that, check it out. It's a good book. For Defense Against the Dark Arts, I ended up reading it's the spell is Reducto, title that starts with an R, and I ended up reading The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, which is about a lady named Dorothy Kilgallen. I hope I said her name right. I remember seeing her in reruns of What's My Line from back in the day, and I never knew that she had been a reporter. She had like a lot of trial experience, like reporting on trials and things, and she really dug into the JFK assassination, and that may be the reason she died at 52. The book put a really tight case together that, you know, she very well could have been murdered for things that she found out in the JFK case. If that's what happened, that's pretty scary, because more than one person has been murdered over that. Then Divination is a book set in the future, and I read Arch Enemies, which is the second book in the Renegades trilogy. I liked it better than the first book. I thought it was more interesting, kept me in better than the first book did. Herbology is a plant on the cover, and I read a book called How to Find Love in a Bookshop, which is a really nice little romance. But it's not just one romance, there's several different romances throughout time, and yeah, it was really well done, and there's like a bush or a flower or something on the front of the cover. History of Magic, a book published at least 10 years ago. I read King Lear by Shakespeare, which was published in like 1603, so I think I have my 10 years covered. Muggle Studies is a contemporary, and I read The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides. It's set in the 80s, but it's basically a contemporary novel. It's an adult novel at the very least, and I can switch it with the adult novel if I needed to. For potions, the prompt is Next Ingredient, which is a sequel, and I read Anne's House of Dreams, which is either the 4th or the 5th book in the Anne of Green Gables series. And for Transfiguration, which is the last one, is Sprayed Edges or a red cover. I went with red cover and read Solo by Kwame Alexander. And yeah, so that pretty much wraps up my owls, what I did. So let me know what you ended up reading, because I think that's very interesting. And I'll have a follow-up here of what should I read for my second half of the month. So stay tuned, keep an eye out for that one.